What's your holy shit, they're a psychopath story? Before we start, comment at what time you're watching this video right now. Alright, on to the stories. 1. Went on a date once and she casually mentioned that when she was a kid, she ended life of her brother's hamster with perfume because she was mad at him like it was some funny childhood story. Safe to say, I immediately started planning how to get out of there. 2. He casually talked about putting a cat in a cage and then dropping the cage in water just to watch it drown, like it was totally normal and something everyone had done before. 3. I met an acquaintance's new boyfriend, and within 10 minutes he was calling women holes. Suddenly, I remembered my husband needed my help with something, and left. 4. It was an Uber driver. My wife and I were headed to the bars one weekend. As soon as he picked us up, I could tell he was high on something. While driving over a bridge on the interstate halfway to our stop, he said, "Isn't it crazy that I could just swerve and krill us all right now?" I told him to take the next exit, canceled the ride, and reported him to Uber so no one else would end up in that car with that psycho. 5. I was walking my dog on a leash along a main road, and a woman nearby had her dog off leash. Her dog stopped in the middle of the road, making cars stop, and she had zero control. When her dog lunged at mine, I told her to leash it. She said she'd stomp on my dog's head and let hers krill it. I knew better than to argue with a lunatic, so I walked away. 2 weeks later, she set her own house on fire with her kids inside. Thankfully, they survived. Edit. Yes, I gave a statement. And yes, she's in prison. She got out after the arson, but was later arrested again for more crimes. Her kids are between 4 and 7 years old. The dog's okay too. 6. A kid I went to primary school with once invited me to his house after school. Hardly anyone talked to him since it was a private school, and his dad was just the groundskeeper. I didn't really want to go, but didn't want to be a jerk, so I agreed but said I couldn't stay long. Behind his house, the yard had a bunch of bare dirt patches. Some had a single stick sticking up, others had thin plastic tubes coming out. He got all excited and started digging at one of the ones with the tube. He pulled out a jar with a dead baby bird inside. The tube went through a hole in the lid for air. He told me he liked burying things alive. Sometimes he sealed the jar. Sometimes he left an air hole. Sometimes he even gave them food and water to keep them alive longer. He said not to bury them too deep, or you can't hear them trying to get out. Occasionally, he'd pour water down the tube to drown them. I was around 8 to 10 years old. I'm 52 now, and that memory still makes me sick. 7. I was chatting with a guy in a pub, seemed like a decent, normal guy, good conversation. Then, out of nowhere, he mentions he'd just gotten out of jail for torturing someone. He didn't actually use the word torturing, but described exactly what he did. He said it so casually, like talking about going to the store for milk. I was stunned. Later I asked around and found out he wasn't lying. If you're still watching, means you're enjoying the stories. Subscribe so you can look forward to more stories like these. Now on to 8. I, 20F, was dating this guy, 23M, for a few months and things were going really well. Then we both had to move for work at around the same time. He wanted to try long distance, so we did. We called almost every day, watched movies together whenever we could, and even though the time zones made it tricky, it wasn't too bad. Then, out of nowhere one day, he just said he didn't want to be together anymore. I was like, wow, okay, a bit blindsided, but fine. I started living normally again, hanging out with friends, just doing normal post-breakup stuff. After about a month, he started begging to get back together. Like, movie-type begging. Sending flowers to my job, mailing handwritten cards every day from across the country. Even buying me a plane ticket to visit him. So I thought, okay, whatever, I'll go and hear him out. Worst case, I just fly home. I booked a flight 2 days later so I could leave quickly if he acted like a dick. He picked me up at the airport and was just like he used to be, telling me he missed me, that breaking up was the biggest mistake of his life, all that. He asked me to stay with his family because he said, "Please don't get a hotel. I already feel bad about the last month. Just stay here." I figured, fine, free room. Everything was fine for the first few days, then I got an alert on my phone, a hurricane warning, and my flight got delayed 4 extra days. I was like, crap, I need to get back to work, I only took 3 days off. When he got home, I told him about it, and he said, oh, I know. We already started boarding up the windows. I was a little freaked out, but thought maybe that's normal during a hurricane. The next morning, he woke me up and told me to come to the living room. I went out and saw him, his 2 brothers, his sister, his mom, and his dad. People I'd only met that one time, all sitting there, and he had a binder. They sat me down and each read something from it, about why we shouldn't be together and how I needed to move on. Then he broke up with me right there, in his parents' house, in front of everyone, during a hurricane power outage. And because of the storm, I was stuck there for 4 more days with those freaks. Not the most psychopath person I've met, but definitely one of the strangest experiences ever. Edit. The most psychopathic person was a friend from high school whose whole family peed in the bathtub. The toilet was only for number 2. 9. I was at a party once and met a friend of a friend who worked as a nurse at a local hospital. She was the kind of person who would sigh loudly and use her job's stress as a way to get attention. She loved being the center of the conversation and started talking about how hard her job was. When I asked what she liked about it, she smiled and said she mostly worked in maternity. But her stories weren't about moms or babies. She went on about how amazing it felt to have control over these women's lives, how fragile they were, and how even after delivery, she was the only one who could predict if there would be serious complications. She actually glowed while talking about how people's lives were in her hands. The group moved on to other topics, but she pulled it back to high school memories. She told this story about how she didn't get into an advanced choir because the teacher supposedly made a bad call. Years later, she sang at that teacher's funeral. I'll never forget how proud she looked, telling that story. It was the most obvious display of pure evil I've ever seen. 10. I was homeless for a few months back in 2008. To pass time, I'd read all kinds of books from the local library. One night at the shelter, a guy who got the bed next to mine asked about the book I was reading. It was about the history of Christian martyrs. I let him borrow it, figuring why not. As soon as I handed it to him, he said how much he gets off on that kind of stuff. Torture, death, all of it. I made sure to stay far away from him after that night. 11. My ex-fiancé once told me that if I got pregnant with a girl before having a boy, he'd push me down the stairs and make me miscarry until we had a boy first. We broke up after that, but later he convinced me to meet him to talk things out. I got in his car, and he calmly started explaining that it didn't matter if I took him back or not as he drove onto the expressway. I asked where we were going, but he stayed completely silent. Then he started speeding up, and while his tone never changed, he began this creepy speech about how our love was eternal and how we'd always be together no matter who tried to keep us apart, even if I didn't realize it yet. I asked again where we were going, and he said we were heading to a neighboring state where no one would know or find us, with this unsettling smile that I still can't forget. Everything about him was calm, which somehow made it worse. I ended up calling my mom, and she had to beg him over the phone to bring me back home. When I refused to see him afterward, he stood outside my family's house all night, singing songs over the phone about how he was going to burn our house down and kill everyone inside if I didn't come out and talk to him. 12. My ex's dad once told this story about putting a wet towel on top of an anthill, then throwing that same towel at my ex. It stuck to her skin, and she was instantly covered in ants biting her all over. He laughed like it was the funniest joke ever. My ex told him it really hurt and messed her up mentally, and he just said, "Well, I'm fine, because I already asked God for forgiveness." 13. I turned down a guy while walking back to my car with groceries. When I got there, he pulled his car up next to mine and kept asking if he could have a hug. In my head, I was like, "Fruck no," but out loud, I just said I had a boyfriend. He finally left, and I got in my car, watching carefully to make sure he didn't follow me. His van was all blacked out too, which just made it even creepier. Like, come on, an all blacked out van? 14. She showed up late to our date, ordered a drink and a burger right away, and said she was late because of some family thing. Before her food even got there, she said she'd have to leave early for a family dinner. I said, okay, no problem. Then she told me this wild story about how her sister met a guy on Tinder, they went to a family barbecue, and somehow that ended with them getting married. Before her burger even arrived, she said, "Wouldn't it be funny if we went to my family barbecue and pretended we were hitting it off so everyone thought we were going to get married?" I'll admit I was a bit of a psycho too because I actually went. The mashed potatoes were great though. She spent the whole night introducing me as her future fiancé, and after that, I took a solid break from Tinder. 15. I was casually seeing a guy for about 5 months. I sent him some photos of my new apartment before I moved in. Then he went on a trip to Scotland and got mad that I wouldn't answer his FaceTimes in the middle of the night. I decided I was done with him because of how pushy and insecure he was. A little later, after I had moved in and was unpacking, there was a knock on my door. Somehow he had found where I lived just from those interior pictures. I don't even have location data on my photos, so there's no way he found it easily. He didn't think it was creepy at all and tried to push the door open while begging me to let him in. I shut and locked it right away and made sure he heard my shotgun cock. He left, and thankfully I never heard from him again. 16. I went to someone's house for dinner once, and in the middle of the meal, the husband suddenly said, "I think Hitler had the right idea about the Jews," His wife just nodded like she agreed. I was frozen for a moment, completely shocked anyone would actually say that out loud. I think they were testing my reaction, but once I snapped out of it, I called them out. They didn't like that. I was never invited over or spoken to again. 17. I went on a date with a guy about 5 years ago, right after my divorce, so I was probably ignoring red flags I wouldn't now. He told me he had pet turtles when he was a kid, but never cleaned their tanks. The water got so filthy that the turtles were basically living infections. Their eyes literally rotted away, and they were swimming blind, in pain, in their own shit. He said he used to just watch them and laugh. It was absolutely fucking disgusting. He laughed while telling me, like it was supposed to be funny. I honestly think he expected me to laugh too. That was just one of many red flags from that guy. He's married with kids now, which is terrifying. That's all for now. Don't forget to subscribe so I can keep bringing you more of these stories. Thanks for sticking around till the end. See you next time, and take care.